Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, television news broadcasters were forced off the air in Kenya on Tuesday as supporters of opposition leader Raila Odinga gathered in a Nairobi park for what they consider his swearing in as president, capping 5 months of political turmoil. Thousands of Odinga supporters are clinging to his claim of voting irregularities in his defeat to President Uhuru Kenyatta in last August's initial presidential vote, which was declared null and void by Kenya's Supreme Court. Odinga and his supporters boycotted the October 26th repeat vote, citing doubts that it would not be conducted fairly. Kenyatta easily won the second election by 98% and was sworn in as the president the next month. Kenya's Attorney General called the symbolic swearing in of Odinga an act of treason. And for more on the latest political drama unfolding in Kenya, viewers correspondent Daniel Schearf joins me live via Skype from Nairobi. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening.
So first, there were fears that this could erupt into a chaotic kind of situation. How would you describe the events as you were there?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty amazing turnout. It started out fairly slow in the early morning, just a handful of people, and more supporters started to trickle in. There was a lot of concern that there might be some clashes with police as the crowds grew bigger. There was at least one incident where tear gas was used, but it was not directly at the venue where the so-called swearing in took place. But we could smell a little bit of the tear gas in the air. But for the most part, there were just some minor clashes among various supporters as they tried to get into good positions to see Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, as he was inaugurated, as he said, the president of Kenya.
Now, we know that people expected to see his coalition partners, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula. It doesn't appear that they were there. Has there been any explanation as to why?
Well, you know, it's the focus has been on Odinga, so I don't know if it's been made clear as to why some of the other leaders were not present while he was there. Certainly, the supporters were there to see Raila Odinga. They wanted to see his so-called swearing-in ceremony, which has been put off a couple of times in the past, and it was actually put off a couple of times today. Originally, the NASA coalition that he heads was going to have it at 8 o'clock this morning, Nairobi time. They pushed it off to 10 o'clock. It didn't actually end up happening until close to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was a long day, many hours in the sun for thousands of his supporters who did eventually turn out in surprisingly large numbers, seeing the difference from this morning, at least, until the afternoon.
Now, Daniel, people across the country are watching, expecting to see the events on television, but apparently televisions were not showing this so-called ceremony of swearing in. How was that? Was there an explanation from the government?
That's right. A couple of the independent television stations were effectively shut down. Their broadcasts today suddenly stopping. I thought it was something wrong with my cable at first, but as everyone discovered, they had been shut down apparently by the authorities. They had expressed concerns earlier before the swearing-in, days ahead of the swearing-in, that they did not want the broadcasters to be broadcasting the event live, and so there was some contention within the Journalists Guild whether or not this was an order from the government or if there was just a suggestion. So it's been very very surprising then that these stations were shut down. There was some broadcasting that was able to continue online for a little while. But the stations themselves, were silenced, and of course that's raised a lot of concerns when it comes to the issue of freedom of speech in the media. We'll see what the authorities say in terms of how they're justifying shutting down these stations. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of questions being asked and a lot of pressure being put on them for why this was done.
But generally, what has been the reaction from the media houses themselves? What have the managers there said?
Well, from what I understand, there's certainly quite a bit of concern among some of the more independent-minded broadcasters and journalists. So I would imagine that they'll be pushing for some solid explanation from the government and to bring them back on the air. So we're waiting to see what'll happen.
Indeed, what a shame. Most people are really concerned that the media in Kenya might be under threat. Daniel, thank you very much for reporting from Nairobi.
My pleasure.
That's Voice of America's Daniel Schearf reporting live via Skype from Nairobi in Kenya.